Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Well, this is a book about asses. We are going to be talking about people who have been told they are an ass and people who think they might be an ass. And I want you to know that the name of the book is So People Say You're an Ass. And just to let you know, the fuller word, the other half of the word starts with H. So you will get a sense of what we mean. It's a very, very, very ugly word. One is considered the lowest of the low. And what kind of people are in this category? I am very, very happy to have as my guest Sarah Brabbs. And this is her very first book. And Sarah, you are from Michigan. And I'll spell the name for all the people who would like to purchase your book. B-R-A-B-B-S. Sarah Brabbs, 2 B's. So tell us what inspired you to write this book, Sarah.
Well, it's a funny story, actually. I was working on a different book, and what happened is I had 2 women in my life that were being complete asses just over a period of time to people that I love dearly. And I know, I kept thinking to myself, someone really needs to write a book about how to not be an ass. And after some time went by, I realized that with my background in training, I could write that book. So wow. That is what I did. I took kind of pretty much everything I could think of that applied, flipped it on its head, and wrote that book instead. And it's been pretty well received, so I guess it was the right thing to do.
Yes, well, we are looking for a pithy book that gets right to the heart of the matter, and it's as I said, a very, very derogative term. And so what qualifies a person to be an ass?
Well, I put them in 2 categories. There are the people that know they're an ass and they don't care. So I would put those people more in the category of sociopaths, psychopaths, and narcissists. And then there are people who are experienced as an ass or just a jerk, kind of on a consistent basis by people, but they're not fully, they don't have that label fully.
Yes. So
there's 2 different people. There's people that are kind of open to growth and are having a hard time navigating being a normal, nice human being. And then there are people who kind of get off on it. You know?
Yes, got it.
Yep.
And okay, I'm sorry. I think I missed the 3rd category.
Yeah.
Well,
no, there was no 3rd category.
Oh, okay. I thought you said. Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So I tell people that to be careful about the label that you give yourself.
Yes.
Because if someone just decides that they're an ass, then they tend to act like an ass a lot of the time. And beyond that, they even can get to be almost proud of that label and think it's funny. And so when someone gets really invested in their identity, they don't really stop to look at that it's an identity that's created. So it's kind of the difference between you can be an ass or you are an ass. And almost no one, with the exception of serious psychopaths, etc., is always an ass.
So do you think the people who really are asses, the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the narcissists, you think they hear the feedback and they know it?
Yes, I do think a lot of them do know it.
They know it, and that's the category of not caring.
Yep.
So, yeah. So
I actually have had some personal experience with that type of person. I had a murderer who lived next door to me, which is just crazy, I know. And then I dated a sociopath, so I had some personal experience a number of years ago with that interaction. And now I'm a coach as well as being a speaker and doing training and teaching and stuff. So I help people that are in this situation all the time.
Wow. The murderer next door.
I know.
My goodness. So when you say your ex-boyfriend was a sociopath, is there an essential difference between sociopath and psychopath?
Oh, they're very similar. I mean, a psychopath sometimes is what we hear more in media and on TV shows and stuff like that. And a sociopath might not commit violence, for instance, but they might commit psychological violence would be a regular thing for them, and emotional violence. The psychopath might be more willing to take it to the next level. It's a little bit more serious. So,
got it. Psychological or emotional violence for the sociopath.
Yeah,
but
I don't know the technical difference between them, but
right. Well, the main thing that they have in common is that they don't have a conscience. Mm-hmm. So other people suffer, and that doesn't matter to them. Other people can suffer from their behavior, and the only thing that matters to them is if they get deprived or punished in any way, then they can be uncomfortable. But many of them seem to be unscathed. Yes.
Well, and they're most comfortable when they have someone around them that they can commit violence to.
Any kind of violence, right? Psychological, emotional, physical.
Right.
What do you?
There's actually a really good book. It's called The Verbally Abusive Relationship.
Yes.
Right? By Patricia Evans. So she has a checklist and a few tools in there, plus a lot of information.
Right.
That helps people understand, is this what's happening? Because it can be very confusing if you're a normal, nice person who's kind to try to navigate someone who doesn't operate with those rules.
That's right. And I interviewed Patricia Evans on her book, Verbally Abusive Relationships. Yes, exactly. So
I'll have to go listen to that.
Yes. And you've done a lot of experiencing of such people and a lot of studying of such people. Mm-hmm. And so what's your advice about dealing with asses?
Well, the book is geared a little bit more at people who are behaving like asses, but who have kind of gotten to that level, right? So they weren't always asses, but somewhere along the way they've just started behaving more poorly. And the reason I think my book is a little different is because, in my experience, a lot of people choose to stay with someone like that, but they're told to leave. So there's not really a lot of tools out there for, what if I'm not leaving? What if I want to make it better as far as I can?
Right.
So, of course, there are lots of warning flags, lots of information and stuff out there that helps people know if they should leave. But ultimately, it's up to that person.
Right.
If they decide to leave, right? If they're ready and if they think that's the right thing. So if they're let's say they're married for 20 years and all of a sudden their spouse starts just becoming more difficult and hard to communicate with and you're fighting a lot, that can be a really quick downturn and hard to understand what's going on and then hard to repair it. And there's have you heard of the Gottman Institute in Seattle?
Surely.
Probably. Yes. So I went there and I got their educator training.
Wow.
Yeah. So what that means is that since I'm not a therapist, I can teach their information.
Yes.
So it's just the same thing, but I teach it, right?
So tell everyone about the Gottman Institute.
Oh, they are fascinating. They are why I originally started doing what I do 5 years ago. I learned about their research. They're most famous for their divorce research, really. It's called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, if you Google it.
Yep.
And it's 4 behaviors that are observable that couples go through in times of conflict and act out. And there's 4 of them, and they kind of go in any order, really. But I want to highlight one of them in a minute, actually.
Yes.
But they can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy after they listen to a couple argue for 5 minutes. And that's across all their studies in over 40 years, over 4,000 couples.
And the number one horseman is contempt.
So there's contempt, defensiveness, criticism, and stonewalling.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, would you like me to briefly explain them?
Sure. I think our audience would love to hear it.
Yes. And there's antidotes. So as much as they've learned about all of this, they now have a whole institute set up to help therapists, couples, and people like me teach the world essentially how to fix this and how to have strong relationships. So criticism is defined as a global statement. It's often said in a rude tone, like, you don't care about me. You're always late. You never remember to do what I ask you to do. It's just deciding and saying something to someone that is a global, always or never is usually involved in that. And defensiveness is a way of saying it's not me, it's you. So the defensive person gets defensive because they feel attacked. And there's a couple different ways it shows up. One is they play the victim, which is someone who will say something like, you're always criticizing me. I can't do anything right with you. And what that does is it takes the conversation and it puts the focus on that person. And the person that complained about something now has to make that person feel better and make it seem like they're not trying to always criticize them. So it derails whatever the conversation is.
Right.
And the other piece of defensiveness is a counterattack. Basically like, no, that's not who I am. Well, you never do this. So it also doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't help a conversation forward. So those are really common. The third one, contempt, is the number one predictor of divorce. And that is because essentially when someone is contemptuous, they believe that they're not on the same playing field with another person. So they look down on their partner, either verbally or non-verbally, in their behavior or their words. And that will never work because without respect, you don't have two equals. So if you imagine your best friend being contemptuous towards you and thinking they're better than you, you would not stay best friends with that person. Just not going to happen. So that is really corrosive.
How can you
stonewalling?
Yes, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
How can you stay best friends with someone who looks down on you?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Right.
And contempt is really the result of long-held negative beliefs. So it's over time, it builds up. It's like rust. So it's kind of a tricky thing to navigate. And the last one is stonewalling, and this one I think is fascinating because when I do a training, I depict a stone wall. It's like you just stand there, not even engaging at all. You might have your arms crossed, and really a stonewaller might leave the room. They just might walk away. So when they interviewed the stonewallers, what they found was actually the stonewallers were in fight or flight. And instinctively, they knew that if they said anything or did anything, it would not be good and it would make things worse. So instead, they just shut down because they don't know what to do. And if it gets really, really bad, they just want to get away.
Would you say that if they cannot fight or flee, that they freeze?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yep. And really, I'm sure, obviously you know, and a lot of your listeners know, that when we're in fight, flight, freeze, we cannot think straight.
Exactly.
So it's physiologically, it doesn't make sense to try to communicate at that time.
Right.
So the problem happens when a stonewaller leaves and then the person feels ignored and uncared about and chases them. Because then usually it just escalates.
Right.
So
it's natural to try to chase, to get your point across, to try to complete something, have some sense of completion or resolution, but it only exacerbates the situation and, in fact, feeds the stonewaller.
Yes.
Yes.
And then sometimes they may even forget what they're fighting about. At this point, they're just no holds barred screaming.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
what was the cause of the original conflict? It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, want me to talk about the antidote since now we've covered the bad news?
Absolutely.
Whenever I talk about this, I just can see the room deflate because they all recognize, oh, I just did that last night, or the truth is we do all of these sometimes. It's not real. That's not really the problem. The problem is if we do them a lot of the time and they become normal. Chronic and normalized. Yes, exactly.
Right.
So the antidote to criticism is to complain without blame. And beyond that, giving your partner a way to win with you. So saying what you do need, right? So complaining is just